What's going on, everyone? It's Epic Meats and welcome to yet another Mighty Movie video. This is a bit of a special one for the channel and a video that we've been working on for a little while now. And notice how I said we because I'm not alone for this discussion, and this is the first for the channel, as I've never done any collaboration vids with anyone before, but now that will change. And to introduce today's topic or theory is a prominent member in the Paw Patrol community. You may have seen him going around to Fanatics or seen his videos on YouTube. He does some pretty neat stuff. So hailing across the pond from Scotland, and to all his fellow Knights, Vikings, Samurai Whirlin, this is Nebula 5. Nebula, take it away.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Meat, and yes, hello to all. My name is Nebula 5, or Michael, and I will be joining the true OG here to discuss the topic on a lot of fandom members' minds right now, and that is, could we see young Skye in the Mighty movie next year? So let's get started. Now, the first thing we're going to discuss is the obvious case of history repeating itself, and Meat, why don't you go first?
And that I will. History has a tendency of repeating itself in the past with some of history's greatest events. Both world wars, the assassinations of multiple US presidents, and our second ongoing Cold War. Even our own lives play a part in this. For Paw Patrol, we see this happen a few times, but one I will make mention to is the KCA teaser for the Paw Patrol movie. There have been a few theories floating around hosting the eventual Mighty movie teaser, though it's too early to tell for sure, but considering that it happened once, it's a probability and a 50-50 chance that it could happen again. Relating this back towards Skye's backstory, if Chase had won in the first movie, then we can't rule out the chance of it happening again. But of course, that will depend on what the filmmakers decide to go with. So Nebula, what are your thoughts on this?
Truth be told, I agree with this. History repeats itself a lot, and it stands to reason that it will happen again with Skye next year. However, I don't see that as being a bad thing, because it's pretty obvious the fandom is begging for backstories for the other pups, because it's not only adorable seeing them as these fluffy, small little bundles of joy and cuteness, but it's also so heartwarming seeing just how their life was before the Paw Patrol, but also what led them to Raider and joining the team. And while yes, it's essentially a rinse and repeat, I'd see that as an okay scenario, because again, this is the kind of thing we've been asking for a very, very long time now. And this actually leads on to our next point here, as to why backstories are important. Now, backstories are common in a lot of media through TV shows, movies, and games, and they help build on a character we've got to know for a while now, and gives us an insight into more of their story and previous life before we get what we currently see. However, kids shows such as Paw Patrol don't really do the backstory gimmick a lot, as their target audience doesn't really have the attention span or need to learn more about a character, as it only really interests in them is their attributes and character building, I guess. And this is why, when we do see or learn about some form of backstory for them before they joined, it makes it all the more special, as it's a much more special occasion. We get excited to learn more about those lovable pups that we've gotten to know for the years now. And while Rubble's backstory was the very first, it was a little bit lackluster, and it also didn't have the impact a backstory should have had. It still was a really good way to learn more about everyone's favourite bulldog. And then when it came to Chase, it was like being hit with a chuck of just the emotion and power, seeing just how rough he had it before he met Ryder, and showed how it not only really helped advance the story, but gave us something that helped build his character so much more. And it's why I believe Skye deserves her own backstory as well, just because of how important it is for fans to learn more about their favourite characters. But, Meat, what is your stance on this?
Pretty much summed up what I was going to say, but yes, I agree. Backstories are important when diving into the story of the characters and why they do this or do that, as well as the events that lead up to the main story taking shape. And sure, most fans of Paw Patrol have been begging for years to see more backstories on the pups, ever since Rubble got his, showing his main characteristics as well as what led him join the team, ultimately having to prove himself to do so. This backstory explains this. Moving over to Chase's, it shows us the reason why he doesn't want to go back to Adventure City after his traumatic experience with his past. This all leads in connection with the events in the present, and if we never got this backstory, most of us would question why he was like this, and of course seeing Puppy Chase, which is something to die for. These backstories provide interest for the audience. While most backstories like Rubble's are simple and straightforward, Chase's feels more emotional, wanting to grasp the audience into feeling sorry for him, a fearful pup lost in the city, and the emotional meeting with Ryder, which shows how he came to be with Ryder, while also providing a bit towards his character in the film. Not having these backstories, character development, and important events from the past will probably leave the audience dissatisfied, as it would be craving for some history on the main character, and not focus on the entirety of the film in the present. Backstories, in short, are important to the narrative. It helps the audience connect to that character and why he or she thinks that way. They do in the film, and why it's important to the conflict in that said piece of media. Whether it be man versus man, man versus nature, man versus self, these are all what a backstory could potentially explore on, and again, how the backstory connects to the main conflict. With that, it brings us to our penultimate topic of the discussion, and that is, if young Skye is in the Mighty movie, how could it be more unique? And I'm going to start off with this. Have Skye tell her backstory herself instead of Ryder, like in the first movie. And sure, it made sense for Ryder to tell it because the question was brought up and he probably couldn't have kept Chase's story hidden for long. I think Skye explaining her backstory would not only help narrate as the scene goes along, but it would give her a perspective and point of view during this backstory. Now, if she does tell her backstory, I would like to be done a similar way to Ryder. Telling the pups, in this case Skye tells all the pups, or maybe someone like Liberty or Chase, are the two characters in my mind that seem reasonable. Another option to explore is when Skye has her backstory, if she does, it could show her in a pose, and when it transitions over to the backstory, it shows the same pose connecting the two together. This next one may be a bit of a stretch, but I don't want Skye's backstory to be set in Adventure City. That was mainly for Chase, and I feel like it should be kept that way. Maybe you're alone somewhere in another location could be a possibility, and like you said earlier, it just might be a bit lazy. And lastly, with Skye's backstory, I would like to see why she became a flying pup. Now, this most likely won't be explored upon, but this is one of the downsides to Chase's backstory, in my opinion. And I felt like it was missing that one detail, and why I was pushing for Chase to be the spin-off series main character. So that could be explored upon why he became a police pup. And hopefully for Skye's, the movie will explain this again, but it might not. Besides this, there is a bit of a problem that I see with coming up with a unique backstory for Skye, and I will explain more on that once Nebula finishes thoughts on this. So Nebula, what are your thoughts on a more unique backstory for Skye?
I've summed up pretty much everything there is, and of course this is obviously one of the main things that fandom members think of when this topic gets thrown into the discussion pool. And let's just say if this scenario does happen, it's almost 100% guaranteed that we will see something different, because having something unique will definitely have it stand out a lot more. Now, first of all, I feel like the first thing we'll see changed will be the setting, mostly just due to the fact that Adventure City was location for Chase's backstory. And the problem is that if Skye was from there as well, it would just feel a bit lazy. And another problem in that sense would be how it would take form. Now by that I mean just what the backstory itself could show us about Skye. Now, from the small synopsis leak, we see in the info that even the smallest pup can make the biggest difference, which says that whatever we could see in Skye's past would have something to do with just how tiny she was with all these big massive things around her that she's got to overcome. And to sum up, I think it could be more unique if they change the location of her past, have the internal conflicts be altered to fit more to her, if that makes sense, and have the way that Ryder finds her be different so that we aren't just getting a carbon copy of Chase's one. And with that, we now arrive at our final topic, which is why it will be difficult to make Skye's backstory more unique. And I'll take the reins and go first. Now, it's going to be quite hard to make a more unique way to show us Skye's past, and there's definitely a significant challenge in doing so, mostly just as when it came to Chase's backstory, the setting fit in with the story as they were going to Adventure City, and it meant Chase was struggling being back there after all his bad memories from long ago. But it's not just that, it's not like they can just throw Skye into the same area and setting for two big reasons. One, if Skye was also from Adventure City, then it would stand to reason that she'd have bad memories from there as well, and would also be apprehensive about returning there. And two, it would just feel really lazy, and the fandom want to see something different, because the armada of Skye fans want to learn more about her, and not just have her story be a mirror image of Chase's. And at the end of the day, there are roadblocks to making a new interesting backstory, if they would even make one. But, I mean, it is like you said, Cal Brunker and Bob Barlin more than likely want to make this sequel even better than the first, which while it is challenging, I do feel like the two of them are up for the task despite the barriers and bumpy road that are in their way. And, mate, now it's your turn, so what are your thoughts regarding the difficulty of making a backstory for Skye?
So I'm going to start off with this. There were theories thrown around about for a backstory revolving around Chase or one of the pups before the reveal when updated synopsis for the film in May of last year, in which a pup's past was to be revealed in the movie. This later turned out to be Chase's who would get the backstory. And for Chase's backstory, there is a fear element, and when there's fear, there is a source for it, and where it came from originally. In this, Chase doesn't want to go back to Adventure City, afraid of confronting his past once again, and the backstory provides us visual depth and explains to us why this is the case. Now, in the case for Skye having a backstory in the Mighty movies, so far it doesn't seem likely, due to a bare-bones synopsis so far, as this was the same case for the original synopsis for the first movie, so nothing different from these two. The first movie was themed around facing your fears, however the Mighty movie is about how the smallest pups or people can make the biggest difference. Just by that theme alone for the Mighty movie, it makes it hard to come up with a backstory. It's easy to explain fears, but not being the smallest pup making a big difference, and there are limited options to explore when making a backstory on this. Plus, one of the things fans of the series demanding to see is backstories on the pups, and with the release of the first movie, it seems to be higher than ever before, considering how Chase was done. And of course, I'm sure Brunker & Co. want to go all out for the sequel and make it better than the first. If you give Skye a backstory, then figuring out a way to top Chase's is going to be a bit of a challenge. Finding something that works well with her, as well as making it more unique than Chase, is going to be interesting to see, but that is only if they end up doing a backstory for Skye.
So, let's finish this with style, and my final statement is this. The likelihood of Skye receiving her own backstory is roughly 65%, I'd say. And while there are things standing in the way of this idea, it's something people want to see, and there are possibilities for what they can do, so it's not just a repeat. And also, considering how the directors really want the Mighty movie to be better than its predecessor, I feel like they will add it in to give the fans just what they want. And before anyone says there's no info confirming any of this right now, I do just want to say, we only found out about the first movie having Chase's backstory about 2 months away from the release date, so there is still a chance, and I'm certainly one of a large majority who really want it, but sadly for now, it's just a matter of time, and we'll hopefully find out soon.
And yes, agreed. It seems that there is a higher chance to see a backstory for Skye in the Mighty movie than there was for Chase at this time in 2020 for the first one, due to the fact that the first movie had one. Like I said earlier, the backstories are the most in demand from the series on people's minds, and now with Chase's happening, the hype for more backstories has never been greater. And like you said, the fans want this. Cal Brunker has stated before that there are more stories to tell with the movies. In earlier tweets, Brunker has already stated that him and his crew are working hard to make the sequel better than the first. And if you're going to make the sequel better than the first, then you have to have a backstory, or else you might not stand a chance. And of course, adding the unique aspect to this. The attempt to make it better than Chase's is the most important part. And yes, it will be difficult to beat it, but all we can do now is wait and hope that an answer to another pup's past will be in the cards. And now we reach the end. A big thanks to Nebula 5 for taking the time to do this alongside me. It was very fun and a collaborative experience. And tell us down in the comments below if you want to see me and Nebula team up together for another collab in the near future, and your thoughts on possibly seeing a backstory of Skye in the Mighty movie. With that, thank you all for watching, and whether it be in one of mine's or Nebula's vids, we will see you all again next time.